can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. And take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for knives to give into the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
All right, Merry Christmas, everybody. Last show before the holidays. So Congress uses COVID to give K Street a Christmas present today on Inside the Numbers. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm the People's Pundit, Rich Barish. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Peoples_Pundit if you don't already. Let's just get right into this article. All right. First of all, thanks to Charlie Kirk for having me at the Turning Point USA to talk about election integrity. That was a lot of fun.
It was awesome.
That was a lot of fun, but got to get back in time for the holidays. Got to get back in time for the kiddies, right? Here we go. Yeah, I know a lot of you guys want me to speak more about political stuff. And since polling is going to slow down, or not slow down, but it's not going to be as relevant. I'm going to find areas where we can talk about numbers in the news, right? Because that's what this is. People's Pundit Daily is a data journalism site. So Trump, of course, if Biden takes over on January 21st, which would be the historical precedent without, you're really relying on Republicans in Congress to be men. And that's a tough call.
That's a foreign concept.
So where I'm going out with this is that you can see Congress lawmakers are like, look, politicians are dirtbags. And for the 4 years that Trump was there, they really, Republican, Democrat, they hated the guy because they couldn't be their normal dirtbag self. And especially Republicans, they had to put on a show. Right? And pretend like they've always been like Donald Trump, trying their hardest to stop this. When in truth, Jonathan Karl is a hack, and he always comes up with anonymous sources, but it doesn't mean what he said wasn't at least somewhat true, where someone pretending to be a Trump ally tells him off the record that they're like chomping at the bit until he's gone. This is why they're chomping at the bit, not because Donald Trump is crass, not because Donald Trump gives them a bad name, not because Donald Trump, any of the myriad excuses you've heard over the last 4 years. It's because Donald Trump does this. So Trump comes out and criticizes this bill, and it reminds me as a parent of like your children had a summer homework assignment, and all of summer goes by, and then school's about to start again. And they're crying because they try to hand you a pile of garbage that doesn't really meet the requirements. It doesn't suffice. It's a bad job. So you tell them, nope, I'm sorry. Go back, start over, give me something good. It's your fault you waited until the very last minute to get it done. Don't cry at mommy and daddy. And in this case, Trump is the daddy. Don't cry at mommy and daddy because you handed in garbage for your homework assignment. This bill is a joke. It is not a COVID relief bill. You know what? Let's start out with Trump's. Before I even get into this, let's start out with, I should have got into his comments. Let's do that. And in fact, I'll read this in a second. Let's listen to Trump real quick.
Throughout the summer, Democrats cruelly blocked COVID relief legislation in an effort to advance their extreme left-wing agenda and influence the election. Then, a few months ago, Congress started negotiations on a new package to get urgently needed help to the American people. It's taken forever. However, the bill they are now planning to send back to my desk is much different than anticipated. It really is a disgrace. For example, among the more than 5,000 pages in this bill, which nobody in Congress has read because of its length and complexity, it's called the COVID relief bill, but it has almost nothing to do with COVID.
That's 100% true. What they did here, folks, and you know what? I'll read the story. We'll get into it. What they did was not do their job, not for appropriation spending, not for COVID stimulus, for anything. They didn't do their job at all. And then at the last minute, they want to get home for Christmas. They are hoping that you're not paying attention, and they ram this through. So, title of the article, you read it on People's Planet Daily, but we're going to read along with it right now. Trump slams COVID relief bill for ridiculously low payments to Americans and wasteful spending. $900 billion COVID relief bill has almost nothing to do with COVID. They packed the appropriations bill, folks, together with the COVID relief bill because there are some Republicans, the cowards that they are, the stupid cowards, mark my words, they will come to you now and say, well, we had this crucial federal appropriations bill wrapped up in it. I didn't want to vote for it. It's a bad bill. But we had critical programs that we needed to fund or else our nation would be defenseless. Our nation would be defenseless. Terrorists could strike at any moment. All right. So anyway, this is what they did. And God bless Rick Scott. Good for you, Rick Scott. Good for you, Senator Rick Scott, and good for you, Rand Paul, and all the others. And I will go over the votes in a second here. There was no Democrat defection. So when you hear Democrats now, Pelosi, Schumer, AOC, Ilhan Omar, there was almost no Democrat defection. There was none in the Senate, and there was 2 in the House. Now they're going to pretend like the increase of payments was their idea all along. Trump said he would easily sign $1,200 in the summer and in the months leading up to the election. Pelosi shut down debate to intentionally hurt you, your families, and Donald Trump's chances of re-election. All right, so this bill provides larger payments to illegal aliens, illegal residents, billions in foreign aid, larger payments to illegals than it does to U.S. citizens and American workers, billions in foreign aid to enemies. Many of them are enemies. And rents to K Street. For those of you who don't know what rents are, rent-seeking behavior is the process of lobbyists trying to keep lawmakers in power for as long as they can. They love increased tenure. They love the 17th Amendment and the 16th, the log rolling deal. Because it's easier to buy one guy, keep him in office the entire time, than it is to keep buying the new guy every time the old corrupt guy's defeated.
That's why term limits would put a
That's why the term limits is really one of the only solutions to rent-seeking behavior. It really is. And they'll still keep doing it, but it'll make it more expensive for them to do. That's why they couldn't stand that state legislatures picked the Senate. They couldn't stand it. The president ripped members of both parties for passing this bill without reading it. And you heard him do that before. I'm not going to read over what he said. Here's some stuff that's in this bill, guys. Foreign assistance in COVID relief. In the COVID relief bill. $85.5 million for assistance to Cambodia, $134 million to Burma, $1.3 billion for Egypt and the Egyptian military, which Donald Trump rightly said in that speech will go to Russia. They intend to use that money almost exclusively to buy Russian surplus military equipment and gear.
But I thought Russia was bad.
This is the thing. This is what's so funny about these people. 4 years, they said this guy was a Russian agent. 4 years, he hurt Ukraine. He had allies in Ukraine who are really allies of Russia. Blah, 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 blah. They're all in the same bed. There was only one man who was not in bed too with them, and they all play for the same team. This was the biggest con. What we witnessed in the last 4 years was the biggest con you have ever seen in your lifetime. These people are so full of it. And Russia collusion was Chinese disinformation, apparently, because Chinese bought politicians were the biggest mouthpieces for Russia collusion. 25 million for democracy and gender programs in Pakistan. So if you can't beat radical Islam, convince them that maybe Allah gave them the wrong chromosomes. 505 million to Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Panama. 40 million for the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., which is not even open for business. 1 billion for the Smithsonian. Again, by the way, these people got these pet projects, these left-wing pet projects, these D.C. bureaucrat pet projects, the swamp pet projects. They all got kicked back during the first bill, and they're getting it again. $1 billion to the Smithsonian plus an additional $154 million for the National Gallery of Art, both of which, like the Kennedy Center, are basically not even open for business. Kennedy is really not, but those two are unrestricted operations. Here's waste. $7 million for reef fish management, $25 million to combat Asian carp, which, by the way, is a serious problem, but it has nothing to do with coronavirus. $2.4 million to count the number of amberjack fish in the Gulf of Mexico. That can't wait. That can't wait. We got millions of businesses shutting down because of lockdowns. They need help. Tens of millions of American workers that are put out of business because of it. 150,000 restaurants and their employees. But amberjack fish, getting an accurate count of amberjack fish in the Gulf of Mexico is just as critical. You don't know how critical it is. And if you don't, it's just because you're not enlightened, you're not smart, you deny science, you're stupid, and just move on, man. Don't you dare object to this. We need an accurate count of amberjack fish. We don't need an accurate count of illegal immigrants in the United States for the census, but we damn better be sure we have an accurate count of amberjack fish.
You don't need an accurate count of the election.
Don't worry about how many people actually sign those verifications.
But you need an accurate count of fish.
Holy hell, man. Everything's upside down. Provision to promote the breeding of fish in federal hatcheries. Fish need help getting it on. $3 million in poultry protection technology. What is that? I didn't get a chance to Google it. What in the hell is poultry protection technology?
I don't know. I guess those chickens need some
turkeys. Did we eat too many turkeys this year?
I guess so.
I thought that can't be possible, Laura, because we weren't supposed to be celebrating Thanksgiving.
I know.
$2 million to research the impact of downed trees. Let me save you a little bit of money. They hit power lines. If they fall in a forest, nobody hears it. And if they fall on your house, you got a real big problem. If they fall on the road on the way to work, you're going to be late. Call your boss. I just saved you $2 million. $566 million for get this, construction projects for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So these people are being rewarded for illegally spying on the Trump campaign. These people being rewarded for climbing up telephone poles outside of Trump Tower when they should have been stopping terrorist attacks, when they should have been investigating Hunter Biden. Oops, they were. Let me tell you something, guys. People ask me all the time, and I got to repeat this because it's an FBI source I was talking to made a ton of sense. And he's, by the way, he's leaving because he can't stand it anymore. He's taking an early retirement. He's out because the Bureau is a dump and he just can't stand it anymore. I'm tired of standing up for rank and file. If they're, and I do know a lot of them are good people, but you are cowards. The lot of you. You're all a bunch of cowards. But he said this. Why on earth would Bill Barr or anybody, Christopher Wray, or even agents on the case, you know, like they were dying to leak to the media about Donald Trump, why on earth would they leak about Clinton in 2016 or investigate her and tell the American people? Why on earth would they tell the American people that Hunter Biden is corrupt and we are in fact investigating him? Why would they do that? Why would they prosecute Joe Biden for taking a 10% kickback from the Chinese? Why would they do that? There's no power in it. The real power is holding it over their head when they get into office. This is J. Edgar Hoover behavior on steroids. J. Edgar Hoover looks like a choir boy compared to these people.
True story.
But he's right. And I mean, really think about that for a second. Forget about integrity. You're thinking like an idealistic person who thinks your government works for you.
They
Who
stopped
thinks
doing that a
long time ago. Who thinks they apply justice fairly, not arbitrarily. That's ridiculous. That's not how people do it, you know? That's not how they do this. If you're going to ask me for a favor, at least have the courtesy to not buzz me during my own show. Anyway, the bottom line is there's no interest in that. There's no interest in doing the right thing. There's no incentive to do the right thing. There's no reward for doing the right thing. The system's not based on merit, it's not based on integrity, and it's not based on virtue. This is a Game of Thrones, man. This is a Game of Thrones. Or if you're a card player, why on earth would you show your hand? Right? Wouldn't you hold that card for when you most need it? Maybe you want $560 million for construction projects in your department. And maybe you're not getting them. Now you have that card and you'll get what you want. Maybe you're looking for a promotion. You'll have that card. You'll get what you want. See, in Hoover's day, it was about the promotion of the Bureau. It was all about the safety and of its survival and the promotion of the Bureau. And making sure that nobody tells the press that he likes wearing dresses on Saturday night. The bill also allows stimulus checks for the families of illegal immigrants, allowing them to get up to $800 each, the president rightly noted. This is far more than Americans are given. The year-end omnibus spending bill was more a combined package that included a coronavirus stimulus bill and other appropriations. And failing to come to agreement throughout the summer and the fall, due to political maneuvering before the election, the U.S. Congress rushed to get out of Washington, D.C. for the Christmas break. The funding package also includes Commerce, Justice, Treasury, Homeland Security, and other federal components. It was previously negotiated, mostly in secret, by Congress, and lawmakers finally came to an agreement on the coronavirus portion over the weekend. They combined the two bills to allow them to get it done in one vote, providing both political cover for bad votes and an easy out before the break. But President Trump is not having it and demanding changes in the 11th hour. And before I read his quote, it is important for you to understand how Congress works. You want to blame someone? You got to blame Mitch McCarthy. You got to blame John Thune. You got to blame the senior senators. You got to blame Kevin McCarthy as the House minority leader. You have to blame his whip. All right. You have to blame Steny Hoyer. You have to blame Nancy Pelosi, because Congress and Washington and D.C. in general is all about seniority, which is why rent-seeking behavior works so efficiently. And interests do get their special interests. They get their Christmas bonuses at the end of the year. This would not have happened without their okay. They allowed it to go through. So when they go on TV and Kevin McCarthy, as he most assuredly is going to do, goes on Maria Bartiromo to say, well, we got the minority and we just have to make do with what we got because Americans are hurting out there. He's full of crap. He is lying to you like Paul Ryan lied to you about having a consensus Obamacare repeal bill. These people lie like you drink water to survive. Quote, Trump. Despite all this wasteful spending and much more, the $900 billion package provides hardworking taxpayers with only $600 in relief payments, and not enough money is given to small businesses, and in particular restaurants, whose owners have suffered so grievously. They were only given a deduction for others to use in business for 2 years. This 2-year period must be withdrawn to allow owners to obtain financing and get their restaurants back in condition. Congress found plenty of money for foreign countries, lobbyists, and special interests, while sending the bare minimum to the American people who need it. It was not their fault. It was China's fault. Listen, Secretary Mnuchin, you could keep your money with my family. We don't need your $600 or your $1,200 or your $1,800, whatever in the hell you plan to send me and my wife because we have children. You can keep it. I don't want to be a part of bankrupting this nation for crumbs. Nancy Pelosi called 12, and Laura's like, I knew you were, when you've been together married for 16 years and known each other for longer, you really start to read each other's minds. All right. Nancy Pelosi over the summer called $1,200 that Trump wanted to give an individual, not a married person with children, crumbs. But she's jumping for joy over $600 the other day. If Trump, but look, the bottom line is, how do you know she approved of it? She passed it. Her House majority passed it. The only reason why this bill may get better in the 11th hour is because of Donald Trump. If you get more money, it's because of Donald Trump. The rest of you, we're going to wipe their butt and throw the tissue at you and tell you, here, I have this you can sneeze in. Okay? That's it. You need to blow your nose. Take this. That's it. They're so full of crap, it makes me sick. As has been the case for most of this 4 years, there really is only one man who was looking out for you. So if you get $1,200 Biden voters, if you get $2,400 Biden voters, don't thank your party. You better thank the guy you hate to death, because Joe Biden would have signed this bill in a second. In a second. Now, McConnell, which we're going to talk about too in more detail, it's incredible how the depth of their stupidity is really difficult to comprehend. They're going to meet not to make this bill better, not to okay the $2,000 payments. Their first line of business will be to count how many votes they have and to see whether or not they can override the president's veto right before a special election, which we'll talk about too. This is how dumb these people are. But Mnuchin, bro, you can keep the money. I don't want to be complicit for $600, $1,200, $1,800. God has blessed me, at least for right now. God has blessed me, but God has blessed my family. God has blessed my business. You guys have blessed me. I don't need this money, and I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to be a part of saddling my children, my 3 kids, with this debt that we cannot afford because daddy wanted $600. I don't want to be a part of it. You better send out instructions on how to return that crap. Don't direct deposit to me, man. I'm serious. I don't want this money.
Those fish need to be counted.
Those fish need to be counted. While they line the pockets of every special interest group in K Street that's worked against your president. I'm not doing it. You can keep that money. I don't want it. I'm not kidding. I'll drop it right back off in your lap. And you guys, honestly, the hell is $600 going to do for some of you guys? Now, I know there are others hurting out there, and $600 would go a long way. You, by all means, you take it. But some of you should be ashamed of yourself if you take this money. HR 133, or the Consolidation Appropriations Act 2021, which including coronavirus stimulus and relief in brackets. They really wrote it like that. I'm not kidding. Passed with 359 yeas to 53 nays in the House. Of the nays, 50 were Republican. Thomas Massie. By the way, this is Trump's flaws. Who did he fight with over the first bill? Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie was right. You don't pass the largest spending bill in the history of the country without debating it, without reading it, without mulling it over. Of the nays, 50 were Republican in the U.S. Senate. Oh, and by the way, just to be accurate here, 2 were Democrat and 1 were Libertarian. Okay? So just so everybody knows, let me just make sure I got my roll call correct. We're going to give you guys a chart later on today. It's going to be pretty cool. Yes, 2 were Democrats and 1 was a Libertarian. The 1 independent in Congress voted yay. All right? In the U.S. House. In the Senate, it passed with 92 yeas and 6 nays. All 6 were Republican. All 6 were Republican. I'm asking Congress to amend this bill and increase the ridiculously low $600 to $2,000 or $4,000 for a couple, Trump said. I'm also asking Congress to immediately get rid of the wasteful and unnecessary items from this legislation and to send me a suitable bill, or else the next administration will have to deliver a package. And maybe that administration will be me, and we will get it done. In other words, what he's saying here is, it may be Joe Biden, Mitch. It may be Joe Biden, Kevin. And you're going to get a worse bill than you had before. And then he's telling them as well, or maybe even worse for you. Maybe I'll pull this off and it'll be me. And then I'm taking it out of your. All right? That's what he's saying. Under pressure, House Democrats are now planning to force a vote this week on increasing the size of the stimulus checks from $600 to $2,000 per adult, as the president demanded. Leadership in both the House and Senate signaled they would support the demand, although attempted to rewrite history. I'm in. What are you saying, Mitch? Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer tweeted. Let's not get bogged down with the ideological offsets and unrelated items and just do this. The American people deserve it.
And when have they been known to just do this and not get bogged down?
This is why I'm going to segue soon into how stupid Mitch McConnell is. This crusty old idiot needs to take a walk.
Let's not even talk about
He needs to go, Laura. The president has successfully boxed Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi into such a corner, they're going to drop the crap from the National Institute of Health, and, the Smithsonian, the art galleries, all their pet projects those are for their big donors, guys, just so you understand.
But where's Israel
Those are for
support?
these elitist, like stiff upper lip, pinky in the air, tea and crumpets donors. And they're going to dump it. Who's going to block it? Like a bunch of idiots? John Thune and Mitch McConnell. That's who's going to do this. Understand, right before two key Senate races, a special and a runoff in Georgia, which will determine the balance of power. Because if Republicans lose both of these, Kamala Harris will be the tiebreaker. And like we have been telling you and Dumb Mitch for 4 years, that should be his name, Dumb Mitch, just flat, Dumb Mitch. They will erase and go to simple majority. They will erase all rules and go to simple majority for everything. Yes, Vice President Mike Pence had to cast tie-breaking votes for the first time ever in history to confirm cabinet members. Betsy DeVos, I believe, right? And others, right? The Supreme Court appointments. We had to threaten that, right? They will do it for everything. Expanding the court.
Oh,
Statehood.
say goodbye to Republic.
You watch. Mark my words. You think I'm wrong about this? When was the last time I was wrong? I dare somebody to find the last time I was wrong about something like this. It's going to happen.
But I want to know where the support is for our allies. Like, you've never seen anything in the bill for Israel.
For Israel.
Where's Israel?
Listen, Israel is in deep trouble if this goes this way. And especially if somebody like Joe Biden's going to fall a lot. Like within 90 days or some very short period of time, Joe Biden is going to slip down the stairs at the White House and something, and that'll be the end of him. He'll be deemed unfit. They'll run the 25th if they have to. He'll be out of there, but he probably won't have to. Joe Biden just wants to sit at the desk for a minute in the office. Like, he's been bit by the presidential bug for decades, since the 80s. He's an idiot who just wants to feel like he's been president for a little bit. After that, he will not. Laura, his son's also under investigation. You understand what I'm saying? Like I told you before, they're right. My guy is right. There's no power in it. You want to get rid of Joe Biden so Kamala can step forward? You don't tell the American people before the election you have all this crap on his son. You keep it. And you blackmail him with it like they blackmail Michael Flynn.
I mean, Mitch bends over one way, Kamala did the other.
I mean,
This is ridiculous. This woman couldn't even win in her own primary.
She didn't get to a single vote. Not a single vote. All right, so look, Schumer's ready to do this. And he retweets that to AOC because it is true, and it's worth noting. The AOCs and this, whatever, her wing, the squad, They wanted this, Laura. They wanted $2,000 payments for individuals. Nancy Pelosi is so full of crap when she says that we couldn't get a firm number from the president all summer. This is a load of crap. She shut down debate because she didn't want the COVID bill to pass. She wanted people to hurt before the election. While she's eating her gourmet ice cream in her $40,000 refrigerator, she wanted normal Americans to suffer so they would take it out on Donald Trump. That's it. At last, the president has agreed to 2,000, she wrote. This woman is so full of crap, it's unbelievable. Democrats are ready to bring this to the floor this week by unanimous consent. Let's do it. And I just, at the end, I got to point this out. Worth noting, the president repeatedly stated that he supported at least $1,200. He was not opposed to the $2,000. Democrats simply refused to take up the relief bill before the election, hoping to hurt the president's prospects at re-election in November. It is true that Republicans, so you see how the uniparty comes together and tries to blame Trump. Mm-hmm. It is true that the dumb Mitches weren't trying to hear 2,000, and they're still not. And they will fight this. And they would rather try to whip up the votes for a veto override than they would to pass this bill without the crap. Let me say this again. So-called conservatives are more willing and more focused on overriding the president's veto than they are getting rid of big government spending. You understand what? Not just because the payments to Americans are payments to Americans. What we're talking about is big government spending. Mm-hmm. They want their war machine, folks, to get their money. They want their foreign entities that they've been telling you should be so afraid of over the last 4 years. Those are their friends. And they want them to get that money. This is so unbelievably dirty.
But just think how much money the American people would have if the Smithsonian didn't need all that.
I know.
Or if the fish counting didn't.
Cerno actually did that. He was like 2,000 by blah blah blah. You save some money. Yeah. And why the hell does anybody else need anything, right? But this is the way these people. This is the way that these people
operate. You're not
operate.
allowed to get a penny,
right?
Until they get paid.
That's right. That's right. And I'm actually trying to find the Hill article here. I mean, there it is. McConnell, Senate to return December 29th after Christmas. For potential Trump veto override. And Ryan Gudersky from, I think it was Newsmax. I don't know where he's working now. Sorry, Ryan. I just don't know. National, but actually went his own way. He said, way to play it ahead of the 2 Senate elections in Georgia. Ryan, and a lot of you, I think you need to start really expanding your mind a little bit to the possibility that these people are mentally handicapped when it comes to political strategy. And they're so corrupt that they don't care. Mm-hmm. They don't understand. They don't care. McConnell just won. Trump's Kentucky coattails, he's good. He doesn't need to worry about this anymore. Lindsey Graham was shilling on Fox a little bit ago, talking about how great this bill was. He just won. Trump's coattails. They have another 6 years, to convince you that they did the right thing. It's incredible.
They're all jokes.
They are complete jokes. Now look on Twitter. The 2000 is trending. And because dumb Mitch is as dumb as he is, House Democrats are getting the credit. House Democrats to bring forth the bill on December 24th, 5 days before this idiot even wants to come back, to provide COVID-19 relief checks of $2,000 to individuals and $4,000 to couples. Not a word about Donald Trump. Not a word. Not a word. This is how dumb the Republican Party is. I can't stress enough. I really can't stress enough that you can't give these people too little credit. Okay, that's what am I putting that correctly? Mm-hmm. Don't ever worry about crediting them too little for intelligence, because you can't do it. These are the dumbest people on the planet who by station ended up where they are. That's it. That's it. All right. And thank you for the super chats. For those of you who did that, of course. Listen, don't forget, I'm going to take a quick 30-second break. I'm about 5 minutes over. Yeah, I mean, some of it, Cindy, is complicit. I mean, they all hate Donald Trump and they want him gone. The bottom line is, they talk behind his back. They laugh behind his back. You remember when he was first inaugurated? And Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell were jointly saying he heard a voice nobody else heard. And now we hear that voice too. Then they were done with the press conference. I went across the street to the hotel and they laughed together. And joked about how he would never get a vote on the wall. Do you remember that? These people absolutely have been waiting for Donald Trump to get out of the Oval Office. It is truth. It is truth about their complicity, that they are complicit in this. But it's also that they are extremely stupid because you wouldn't be complicit if you had a brain. There is no future in the Republican Party if this is the direction they're going to try to go. Mm-hmm. They will dismantle the largest coalition in Republican history that Donald Trump is responsible for. Not them. They are responsible for none of it.
It's not their fault.
Mitt Romney, George W. Bush, John McCain, they would never have been able to cobble together this large a coalition. Ever. Never, ever, 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 ever. All right, I'm going to take a 30-second break. Before I go, don't forget to... Really, producer.
Hey!
Really, madam producer.
Listen, I'm exhausted from traveling.
Look, she's fantastic, though. She does her job, and she does it fantastic. She really does. She's not only a great wife, but she's a great producer. All right, so once in a while, if she hits the wrong button after 6 planes in 30 hours, I'm not going to give her a hard time for it. All right. Before we go, don't forget to like the page People's Pundit Daily if you're on Facebook. We would very much and greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe to People's Pundit Daily on YouTube. Hit that notification bell, and that'll let you know when we're going to go live. If you like PPD on Facebook Live always alerts people immediately. It's fantastic. YouTube is a little bit of a lag, but don't forget to hit that notification bell anyway. All right. And of course, the best way to support the show is to become a subscriber. All of that is in the YouTube description page, so I will not bore you with it. We'll be back in 30 seconds. I hope you all are getting ready to do something very Christmassy, very festive, very holiday. I was just going to say, those of you who are Jewish out there, I hope you had a fantastic Hanukkah. We didn't get a chance to talk much about this, but I hope you did. We have got to find the joy in life. You can't always be mad at everything. That is the problem with people who substitute political ideology for place in, substitute or occupy the space in your heart that is supposed to be for the good things in life, or the creator, the architect, right? And family, and faith, and friends, and community. We cannot, that is what happens. You turn into them. Those kinds of people. All right? Ideology. Conservatism, really? That's the difference between conservatism and liberalism. Conservatism is not really an ideology. It's a way of life. There are other things that occupy that space that an ideology occupies. Liberalism is an ideology. It is, because it's more than a way of life. It's more like a religious belief system. So, true ideology. All right. But anyway, that's my academic tip for the day. We'll be back in 30 seconds. By the way, if you know somebody who is desperately in need of a PS5 for their kid and they are in my area, please email Laura. And I am not talking about some jobless idiot who is spends all his time gaming when he should be supporting his family. I'm talking about if you truly know somebody, a couple, a parent, or whatever, who is trying to get one for their child and cannot, please let us know and we will provide one for them. Okay. Now listen, I am not kidding. Do not hit us up with a million emails from gamers who are dying to get one. I am talking about some kid asked for it from their mommy and daddy and cannot get it because it stinks when that happens. And you got a good kid who really deserves something and you can't find it because there's a bunch of loser scrapers out there who rip up the restocks before and burn them before they get a chance to get them. All right. That's number one.
And
All
we're
right.
not going to charge you $800.
Yeah, and no, we're not. This is not one of those. Well, that's what they were doing. For those
I
who
know.
don't know and have run into this problem, they're like scrapers out there, and they're gobbling up all the restocks. They see it before you could possibly see it with the human eye on an online web store or something, and they scrape it from the cart before you even get a chance to add it to your cart. And I was honestly thinking, like, if I wasn't the People's Pundit who had a career to worry about, and I was me 20 years ago, I would be like, yeah, I'll buy one for 800, and then whoop, I mean, that stuff is just disgusting. I mean, what kind of person does that? Anyway, yeah, so please do. You know how to get a hold of Laura, and if they're in the area and we can make that happen for somebody, then we will. We were thinking of calling, the church and seeing, and we will probably do that, so, but if you guys know somebody and you know where we are, then let us know. All right. So moving on, let's get rid of this real quick. Let's remove this and let's look at Trump's thing. I want to play something else from Trump the other day that he said, that really, really pissed off, big tech and liberals. And apparently he was advised not to give this speech. And let's just go on Twitter. I will share the audio because I want to pause it and do it and pause it and talk, right? Let's share this and let's listen to Trump real quick. And if there's an audio issue, please let me know, Madam Producer. I think I got this.
My fellow Americans, today I want to explain to you why I am so determined to pursue every legal and constitutional option available to stop the theft of the presidential election. As president, one of my most solemn duties is to protect the integrity of your sacred right to vote. This year, using the virus as a pretext, Democrat officials in the key swing states illegally violated their own state laws in order to enable, encourage, and facilitate fraud on a scale never before seen in the history of our country. The truth is, we won the election by a landslide. We won it big. Today, I'm going to give you the facts that every American needs to know. Let's go back to the night of the election. By midnight, we had a commanding lead in the swing states. We won Florida by a record number of votes. We won Ohio by a record number of votes. And likewise, we won Iowa by 8.2%, far different than the false narrative portrayed in the media.
Hang tight on that 1 second. And let's just take a look back at what he means. Because why I'm playing this is because I finally feel like Donald Trump hit the nail on the head here, where there was a lot of people around him really hurt him, not understanding what happened, not understanding how they got rolled, what was the angle here. Look at what he was saying with Florida, Ohio, and Iowa for 1 second. Because when you're an election forecaster, like I said to the kids at Turning Point yesterday, if you would have told an election forecaster, me or any other election forecaster, that Donald Trump won 75 million votes, he carried the state of Florida by over 3 points, he won Iowa by 8 points and change, he won Ohio by 8 points and change, and he won the largest number of non-white votes in any Republican president since Richard Milhouse Nixon, I would tell you, Larry Sabato would tell you, and all the rest of them would tell you that means Donald Trump won this election in a landslide. This is the Florida election results going back to 2000. George W. Bush, as you all know, won by a handful of votes, about 500, and I believe 64. In 2004, with it was much whiter back then, but of course his brother was very popular. He did win by 4 points, but that was a little bit of a different year. You had 9/11, a lot of veterans, little mitigating circumstances there, but very close to Trump's margin from this year. In 2008, in his landslide victory, 400 territory for electoral votes, flips Indiana. Obama won the state of Florida by less than Donald Trump's margin. In 2012, he barely won it. he was reelected, and he actually lost millions of votes. First president in history to win re-election with fewer votes and with fewer votes in the Electoral College. No president who has increased his vote share has ever lost re-election. In 2016, Trump won it by 1.2% and ran the table in the Rust Belt. All right, so I just wanted to point that out to give you context to what he's saying here. And by the way, Twitter puts this claim about election fraud is disputed. In fact, the facts that he lays out, none of them are disputed.
We were up by 293,000 votes in Michigan, 112,000 votes in Wisconsin, 356,000 votes in Georgia, and nearly 700,000 votes in Pennsylvania, all swing states.
You're welcome, Mr. President. My pleasure.
These numbers were absolutely impossible for Joe Biden to overcome, and the Democrats knew it, and everybody forecasting knew it and understood it well. Our nation's greatest political professionals were calling to congratulate me on our victory. Then
fact check true.
Suddenly everything started to disappear. Everything started to change. The vote counting abruptly stopped in multiple states.
Red flag by the State Department that the election is not secure.
In the middle of the night, a series of massive and statistically inconceivable vote dumps overturned the results in state after state.
A massive violation of international standards.
At 6:31 a.m., very early in the morning,
timestamp People's Pundit Daily election reporting results.
Michigan suddenly reported 147,224 votes.
You're welcome.
94% for Biden, 6% for Trump. At 4:42 a.m., Wisconsin reported 143,279 votes, almost all of them for Biden.
Hat tip, People's Pundit Daily.
A similar massive drop of ballots happened in Georgia at 1:34 a.m.
Timestamp, People's Pundit Daily.
Again, almost all of these votes for Biden. These gigantic and ridiculously one-sided spikes were miraculously just enough to push Joe Biden into the lead in all of the key swing states. These glaring anomalies are just the tip of the iceberg. We won 18 of 19 bellwether counties, a record, that have correctly predicted the winner of every presidential election for the last 40 years.
Fact check true.
We also won Ohio, Florida, and Iowa by historic margins, meaning Biden would be the first candidate since 1960 and only the second candidate in American history to win the White House while losing all three of those major states.
Both claims, fact check true.
And it wasn't even close.
Fact check true.
Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. The Democrats lost 25 out of 26 toss-up House seats. That's a record. Democrats were projected to gain 15 seats, and instead, because of my success and coattails, as they call them, they lost 14 seats.
Fact check true. Maria Salazar, you would not be the Congresswoman-elect in Florida 27 if Donald Trump did not dramatically increase his vote share in your district.
So think of that. They were going to win big, and they ended up losing big. My campaign received more votes than any president in history. Almost 75 million people voted for me. We earned approximately 12 million more votes than we got in 2016, the largest vote increase for an incumbent president ever recorded.
Fact check true.
I also received the largest share of non-white voters of any Republican in over 60 years. In fact, we did better with African American and Hispanic voters everywhere in the country, except for a small handful of corrupt Democrat-run cities in key swing states, places notorious for fraud, such as Milwaukee, Detroit, Atlanta, and Philadelphia, all run by Democrat machine politicians. No president has ever lost re-election while making such extraordinary gains across the board. There's never been anything like it. Yet despite all of this evidence of a thundering Trump victory and all of those projections all through the night, they want us to believe that Joe Biden, who seldom left his basement to campaign, somehow received 11.7 million more votes than Barack Obama, and he beat Barack Obama all over the country. It is historically, mathematically, politically, and logically impossible. It did not happen. He did not win. We won by a landslide. So funny. Over the past 7 weeks, we have put forth abundant evidence proving how the Democrats perpetrated this monstrous fraud on the American people and indeed the world. First, we have shown that officials in virtually every key swing state brazenly violated their own state laws in order to change election procedures, eliminate safeguards, promote fraud, and illegally benefit Joe Biden. And legislatures, which have to make the changes, were seldom, if ever, used. For example, Pennsylvania's radical Democrat Secretary of State suspended all signature verification requirements, breaking Pennsylvania law, not to mention the big and very illegal ballot drops.
So I'm hoping a lot of this sounds familiar to you guys. I'm pausing for a minute and I'm playing it in almost its own entirety here without interruption, except for me here and there, because finally, if you watch this show leading up into the election, you know this, all right? And this is really what he should be focused on. So, give credit where credit's due.
In Michigan, the Secretary of State, a Democrat, illegally flooded the state with absentee ballot applications, even though Michigan law strictly limits the distribution of absentee ballots. In Wisconsin, the major Democrat cities deployed over 500 unmanned, unsecured ballot drop boxes that were blatantly illegal, paving the way for unlawful ballot harvesting and tremendous fraud. In Georgia, the Secretary of State began illegally processing ballots weeks before Election Day and also destroyed the signature verification systems in violation of the law. Many other horrible things were done in Georgia. These actions alone were more than enough to rig the election results for Democrats. Second, the absentee ballot rejection rates prove that hundreds of thousands of illegitimate ballots were counted in the key states. This was sufficient to change the election results all on its own. In 2016, 6.4% of mail-in ballots were rejected in Georgia. This year, fewer than a tiny percentage of 1% were rejected.
0.4.
So you went all the way down, a difference of more than 30 times. The same phenomenon occurred in Pennsylvania and other states. They were accepting all of these ballots, many of which were absolutely illegal. In a year in which the number of mail-in ballots was the highest ever, the rejection rate was magically the lowest ever, and it wasn't even close. The only possible explanation is that tens of thousands of ballots were unlawfully processed and counted.
When asked in Georgia, do you think that honestly, do you believe that election officials only counted ballots after carefully matching signatures, or do you think they looked the other way and counted ballots with mismatched signatures? More than 4 in 10 voters in Georgia believe that they counted ballots with mismatched signatures. All right, and I'm going to actually, after this, show you records specifically in Michigan because I'm in the Navarro report. I'm going to show you specifically what I was talking about, which Peter Navarro's report cites.
Most Americans would be shocked to learn that in no swing state is there any meaningful attempt to verify citizenship, residency, identity, or eligibility for mail-in ballots. The potential for illegal activity is unlimited.
Well, that's a great word. Hold on, time out. That is a great word because so many people ask me all the time, could it be that much, Rich? Could it really be that much? The answer is absolutely. Who's watching? We got to go through this process again. 1, the difference. Everybody gets a ballot. In prior years, ballots must be requested and inactive voters must update their information. Even the dead, change of address flags, and other inactive voters will or did receive ballots or ballot requests. That was what they were shooting for. And as we saw in many of these states, they got it. What we see when we look at these records and when we find some of these ballots of deads and the change of address, They were at it for months. Months. And I'm going to show you in a second. You will see the date stamps on your own. If you had, we have, and in the past, there have been indictments over it. There have been people removed from their posts because of it in a normal election where they didn't flood the zone, which is a good phrase to use. Glenn, hat tip Glenn, if you're listening. They did not flood the zone with unlimited potential. They never had a chance to do it at such a grand scale. They didn't have 2 months to do it. This time around, they did. And the removal of the verification procedures and the integrity deadlines made it possible for them to continue to do it even after the election. So what it looks like happened is that they had some just in the bank. Many, not some, many. Significant number. Significant numbers. Talking about different states. Trump got way more votes than I think anybody thought he was going to get. Now, this is some speculation because I'm not in their mind, but I'm looking at what I see and I'm telling you what it looks like happened to me. They had a number in their head or a rough range. He blew way past it. And then they stopped counting because they needed it. They panicked.
And paused.
They panicked and paused, and they needed to put in place the measures that they had crafted before to play catch up. I don't know what other reason there could be for Fulton telling us they have this many ballots. The state alone telling us they had this many ballots. Philadelphia, 650, and statewide, 2.4. And then none of those numbers holding, but that only changing way later in the night. We're not talking about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, when people would think, all right, they're processing late arriving ballots. You know what happens. Ohio did it. They did it generally without any problems. They have some of the most strict laws when it comes to handling absentee ballots leading up until election. Florida is allowed to handle absentee ballots for quite a while before the election, so they could process them very quickly. But in the past, we have seen, we got 35,000 more, 30,000 more in a big, big county, which was always under suspect, by the way. Always suspect. And notice, that did not happen this time. All right, so it is easy. Like he said, it's the word unlimited that he used is the correct word to use. And then they had the means of retrieving them and plenty of time to do so. And if they had to do more later on, they were able, obviously, to do it. And where they didn't get ballot harvesters, they got around it with insecure ballot drops, curbside, the U.S. Postal Service. I mean, come on, people.
Hundreds and hundreds of witnesses have come forward to testify under penalty of perjury.
Yeah, they're all just lying. Under penalty of perjury, they're all just lying. That's very plausible explanation. Good for you.
About the cheating and fraud they saw with their own eyes. Witnesses have sworn that they saw poll workers illegally backdating thousands of ballots, counting batches of the same ballots many times, and unloading boxes and boxes of ballots, all bearing the same signature and all for Joe Biden. Other witnesses have
There's something I want to say about that. The reason why I can't swallow the demographics and geographic argument is because it's not like we didn't get any absentee ballot vote before these late arriving dumps. We did. And it didn't, from demographically similar places, from geographically similar places, and even geographically the same places. Mm-hmm. So it makes no sense that the absentee ballots that we had at 10 broke a certain way for Joe Biden in the same area among the same demographics. But the ones later all broke so ridiculously heavy. That doesn't happen. Or it does, and it's not it's not something that can be easily swallowed. For instance, folks, in Florida this year, that used to happen all the time in Broward County, and Republicans would have a canary over it. This year, it didn't happen like that. What, ballots trickled in later because there was essentially 3 dumps in Florida. The first dump was early vote. The second dump was election day. And then the third was late arriving absentee ballots that they didn't process yet. Not late like after the election, still within the deadline. Because in Florida, if you try to count something late or if you fail to report something, you are forced to go to a judge now and explain why it is that you magically found 50,000 ballots in a warehouse somewhere. It didn't happen. The late ones that did come in look just like the first dump, right? 70-30. They were not much different. So if there's demographics are similar, if geography is similar, and time, the time is the only thing that differs, that doesn't smell right.
Testified to seeing thousands of so-called pristine ballots with no creases or folds, all voting for Biden. When you have no fold, it means it wasn't mailed. It means it was a fraud. Republican poll watchers were denied critical access as hundreds of thousands of votes were counted in Democrat-run cities in the essential states. There is even security camera footage from Georgia that shows officials telling poll watchers to leave the room before pulling suitcases of ballots out from under the tables and continuing to count for hours.
He's referring to the video you probably all know, but I just want to mention that fake fact check did not debunk anything. It did not debunk the central claim that Republicans were making, which is that poll watchers were told to leave and then votes were counted outside of the spectrum of oversight. And whether or not they want to make up some excuse as to why ballots would be in suitcases and not appropriate carriers, I mean, you could just, do you, that really, you have to ask yourself a question. Do you believe these officials in Fulton County, who can't even spell right, by the way, we go through the absentee ballot records, they can't even spell correctly. I mean, these are not like whips. Okay.
But also,
do you believe that they are afforded the benefit of the doubt given their track record? Understand that they were forced to have an independent overseer there because of their problems in the past. Granted, he was on the phone in the corner the whole night and fell asleep. So he wasn't doing his damn job, but they were forced to, nonetheless, at the center, at the convention center.
But
the arena,
were
sorry.
also the same. Did you see them pull out the same type of suitcase?
Yeah, well, what do you mean? The several times? Yeah, well, that probably means it came from the same source.
Yeah,
That's it. I mean, right. Here, let's keep going.
The reason they were forced to leave the room is they said there was a major water main break. The water main break never happened.
The water main break story, first we were told by party officials that it wasn't a break, it never happened. Although they claimed it did, and yes, it did stop counting. It was a reason. But it was condensation on a pipe. And then something about a toilet. I mean, the story changed 3 times, right? Like 3 times. And then it just turned out it just was not really nothing happened.
There was no water main break. In many cases, Republican poll watchers were physically removed from rooms. In addition, there is the deeply troubling matter of Dominion voting systems. In just one Michigan county alone, 6,000 votes were switched from Trump to Biden.
All right, now we do know that part is true. You know how I feel about Dominion. I feel like it's really maybe it's not irrelevant. Maybe it warrants investigation later. I just feel like it's not necessary to explain what happened here. Antrim County absolutely was a problem, and they had to switch. They switched 6,000 votes, a county that went over. I mean, it's technically is a typical red county, or it is moving red. Trump really made it move red. It went for him overwhelmingly last time. It went for him roughly by the same margin. I think even a little stronger this time. And for some reason on election night, it was one of the counties I mentioned on live TV. I was like, something is terribly wrong here. There is no way Joe Biden is leading in Antrim County. It's not possible. So color me skeptical. What is going on here? Right? All right. So here we go. Very funny comment. I'll read, Joel. He said, one grad here. Could you help Rich? Could you ask Rich how long it would take to get answers from these clerks doing this stuff using enhanced interrogation techniques used on Rich and I? I'm going to take a leap here and say you went to Sears School. Yes. All right. And you did. All right. So that's hilarious. You know, if you ask John McCain, he'll tell you that, you know, putting the cheesecloth over the face and dumping the pitchers and buckets of water over it will get, you know, Janice and the other schlub we're going to look at in a little bit to confess, even though they didn't really do it. You know, believe me, I'll tell you what, that's funny stuff. That's funny stuff. But we're going to look at some of them in a second. This is David Gottlieb. Any chance we get voter integrity laws passed in the 6 suspicious states by 2024, or will we go through the same thing in 2024? Listen, I was going to kind of end the show with this, but I'm going to say it now. Like I said yesterday at Turning Point, what is your top issue? Is it guns? Is it the Second Amendment, the defense over the Second Amendment? Is it abortion? Are you adamantly opposed to abortion? You believe it is murder, right? Is it economic freedom?
Your most passionate
Is it anti-war, anti-deep state, immigration, trade? What is your most passionate issue? Which you say to yourself, if I was a one issue voter, would it be out? Then you need to, because that's something that's really near and dear to your heart. You need to shove it over a little bit, make some room in the center of your heart for election integrity right next to your one issue vote. All right? Because it's that important. It's a wrap if we continue to conduct elections like this. It's a wrap, meaning it will all come apart. It will end in violence. Civil society will break down because self-governing societies rely on election integrity because you need regime credibility. Our intelligence services around the globe, why do you think they went after Maduro on election integrity? They did it to Gaddafi all the time. They do it to Putin all the time. Bashar al-Assad, any whatever. Maybe it was fair and secure and credible. Maybe it wasn't. Their goal is to inject a doubt in regime credibility in our enemies, in regime, because they know that leads to civil unrest. And hopefully, in their minds, a civil war. Because that's what they're trying to do. They have allies in those nation states that tell them, if you could just throw Bashar al-Assad out, we could run and govern this country more satisfactory to Western interests. So that's what they do. That is part of the plan.
But when they use,
it's the first part of the plan.
They use tactics that they're supposed to use.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. They've been using those tactics on us.
We're going to have drone strikes now on U.S. citizens.
And they already did. Barack Obama killed al-Awlaki. You may have thought he was a bad guy,
yeah.
But him and his son, I believe, teenage son, who was with him, he had a right to a trial by jury. Yeah. He had a right to due process. And Obama vaporized him. Do you really think this is a leap here, folks? It's not. I mean, you'd be fooling yourself. We are an exceptional country, but we are not one that is exempt. That's the wrong E word from history. If we lose regime credibility, if we lose confidence in the integrity of our elections, this is over. And it will devolve very quickly. So we have to do what David is asking. You need to push over your top issue and make sure that there's room there. Why do I say in your heart? Because you'll fight for it. You'll fight to the end for it. You need to make this an issue that everyone who runs, whether it's an incumbent who wants their seat again, whether it's a challenger, that has to be a litmus test. That's where I'm trying to go with this. This is that important. It has to be a litmus test. Can I get your vote? I don't know. Do you support integrity deadlines? How do you feel about mail-in voting?
I don't know.
Because if you
What's
don't
signature
support
match?
this, and this, I will not support you. In fact, I may find somebody, actively look for somebody who will defeat you, who does support it and will defeat you. That is how important this needs to be. And, it, really, you have 2 years to purge this party. You have 2 years. One election, a political revolution, one man, the election of one man, a political revolution does not make. You see what happens when he doesn't have the machine that Robert and I have been talking about. Jackson, that's why he built the machine that he built, which we now know to be the Democratic Party. Of course, Jackson would hate the modern Democratic Party. Of course, he would hate it to death. But that's why he had to build that, because he got flanked from all directions. People he thought was political allies. The minute you step out of the status quo, the minute you step out of the comfort of the system, and you actually try to help everyday people, you are the enemy of both sides. All sides. All sides.
Good luck, Democrats, when you step out of line.
They'll never step out of line, though.
No, I'm
Who's their
talking about
champion?
Their followers who think.
Oh, the people themselves.
The people,
Yeah.
Democrats,
Look,
you'll
that's
be the
something
first leg
Democratic
in the
voters
slaughterhouse.
are going to have to really think about. If you are not a corporatist, then you really need to rethink your allegiance to the Democratic Party. It's actually really close to fascism. So a lot of Republicans always say it's socialism, it's socialism. It's actually really close to fascism, which gets labeled on the right all the time. And the only reason why fascism got labeled on the right is because we needed the old help of Uncle Joe, who was a left-wing communist nutcase murderer during World War II. So we kind of played with definitions to make ourselves justify why we allied ourselves with a mass murderer and a nut job leftist.
Well, the enemy
all
is
right?
my enemy is
That's right. But the fact of the matter is, fascism is socialism only with corporate control. Or it's government control, but it's under the guise of corporatism, right?
Mhm.
So you can keep your job as the head of this company, but when I tell you to do something, you're going to freaking do it because it's for the good of the country. National Workers' Party, baby. You know, I mean,
It's
that's
like the ultimate mob scheme.
yeah, you're going to, right. It really is like a mob racket. It very,
Mhm.
very much is like, and modern corporate Democrat philosophy is very, very, very close to fascism. Much, honestly, in my opinion, much closer to fascism than it is to communism, because commies do believe in something,
Mhm.
right? And a Marxist has a absolute view of certain things. These people have very objective, ever-changing and ever-evolving views of principles. They change when the needs of the state change, when the needs of the political class changes, right? They don't have objective truth. It's just, to me, anyway, it's less like people, Republicans, their talking points tend to be about communism and Marxism. And there are, of course, elements like Antifa, very much Marxist, very, very much Marxist in nature. But overall, the control of the modern left-wing Democratic Party is much closer to fascism.
Mhm.
It is. All right. So, because they're all happy to get rich if they could do it. You know what I'm saying? They're all very happy to do so. So, yeah, I mean, I was going to do an outgoing monologue on that, David, but the answer to that question is you have to. You have to. You really have to. I mean, you got to want it and fight for it, and it's got to be a litmus test for candidates like it is for your top issue. Again, for those who just joined, if you were a one-issue voter, what would that issue be? Now, push over that issue and make room in your heart for election integrity, because it's that important. Because if you don't, none of those other issues matter. They just don't matter. It's irrelevant. All right. So we have a little bit before we get into this. I'm going to show some. Let's get into Michigan and talk about some of these records that were in the Navarro report. Okay. I'm going to actually pull up the PDF that was the investigation summary. All right. So basically, these are the findings from what we did is pull randomly. I mean, technically it is random, but we didn't pull from records on the voter file that we knew would be legitimate records. We targeted on the voter file people that were suspected deceased, and also changed address flags, right? And from there, we went down the list and to see whether or not these people had submitted absentee ballots. All right. So there, we also crossed it with the resident database to see if at some point they in fact did live there. And then we crossed it with the death indexes if they were dead. And we crossed it with other residency databases to see whether or not they truly did move to other states. Okay. And then obituaries, in our case, were just used to confirm death indexes. Sometimes we'd find an obituary, so we call them like a partial match. All right. But you have to, in order to identify an individual, you don't have social security numbers. You have the highest degree of certainty is first name, middle name, last name, date of birth, 10 day, year, and of course you have their address. All right. Second down, maybe you don't have a full middle name, you have a middle initial, last name, date of birth in that format, month, day, year, and an address. And down the line. So maybe you have no middle initial, that would be a number 3, certain degree, a lesser degree of certainty, but still first name, last name match. Date of birth matches, 10-month year, address. When you get into the 4s and below, it's starting to get into maybe names, maybe you don't have a day for the birth, but you have a month and a year and the address matches, okay? So it's kind of convoluted, but under no circumstance would it be that it's blind. And if we did say these are confirmed, it means they are confirmed. They are confirmed with a very high degree of likelihood. They have the address. Unless, of course, some oddball name had the same residency. It's just, guys, with the same birthday. It's just, some of the stuff the media is trying to sell to you, feed you, is so beyond belief. It's so beyond belief. All right. And then we had somebody, as you guys know, take a look at it. So the reason why we had some absentee ballot application stuff in here, because that is the next step. I think we're going to have to force them to legally do this. Robert is traveling this week too, but I got to get with Robert because we're going to have to legally compel them to do this, which is why we are going to move into a nonprofit direction. And because this really has to be moved to another space. This should never be done for profit. Okay. Not the correct space for it. Right? So just to give you an idea, you go to the front-facing website, the public website for the Secretary of State. They have, if you wanted to see it at the time, first name, last name, zip code, date of birth, and you have to match that date of birth. So what I'm telling you we did to match these records is the same standard that all of these secretaries of state use, all right, when you want to look up your own information. So what the media wants you to think is that how the government does it is not good enough for how we're doing it. It's ridiculous. I saw them attack Matt Brainerd over this as well. It is the industry standard to match name, date of birth, and addresses. You don't have their social security number. So they make this crap up as they go along. It's unbelievable. So here's some, and some were struck, by the way. So we put it onto this giant database for this guy to look at, which is held by Everviz. And it's basically a sortable data table. All right. There were 11,820 entries. Each individual entry provided the following information on an individual person. First and last, and if they had more, they had more. Zip code, date of birth, date of death, and current age. The following, or what they would be if they were dead. Okay? Or basically. And that's a snippet from it, and you can clearly see it. So I asked, can you please verify that, in fact, the individuals on this list were deceased? And that also, they did, in fact, return ballots and had voted in the most recent election. To confirm the accuracy of the information in the document, this investigator cross-checked it with investigative sources that he identifies, in the following thing. And to go over it, so due to the volume, what he did was a random. So essentially, this list is double blind. It's double random because we did not pull every single deceased and dead or change of address flag off the voter rolls in any of these states. We pulled randoms to see whether or not, as a percentage of the overall list, it indicated a statistically significant problem that would be highly indicative that this is intentional and systemic and significant. Like, to use the media's word, significant voter fraud, right? What's the other one they use? Widespread.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super spreader.
All right. So they pulled the subsample for review and investigation randomly, choosing single names located on the first 272 pages of the list, and the total sample size was 117 or 1%. All right. And some of you maybe saw me go over this a little bit. Just bear with me because of the news yesterday. I want to explain it a little bit more, right? The interest of transparency. So there's the resource for the Michigan Voter Information Center and the landing pages. I mean, he's just basically doing credit. That's what it looks like when you go there. For if you're a person, you don't have access to voter files or absentee ballot voting records. Now our voter files are updating. This is what you would do. If you are a voter who wanted to check on the status of your own ballot, this is what you would do. So the idea that this information would be inaccurate is a testament to the stupidity of the modern media, or the complicit, nature, because they want to help these people skirt problems. All right. Anyway, so when the information is entered, the return result indicates if the person whose information was entered is in fact registered to vote, the date the individual applied for a ballot, the date the ballot was sent, the date the ballot was received. It's that simple. The voter information site also provides general registration information, including the city, county, and precinct the voter is in, the township, the city clerk, and in-person voting location. The following snip was taken from the actual result in this investigation. The directional arrows identify the information which was collected by this investigator and recorded in document B. So what he's doing is confirming that we were, in fact, we did this. It was real. That's what, that it was methodology. All right. You're trying to get me, Madam Producer. I'm going to take a sip of water.
Notes, but
okay.
look at your notes.
I can't look at the notes and read at the same exact time.
Yes,
All right.
you said use his name.
Oh, Patrick. He can say his name.
Yep, he's certified.
All right. I always try to protect this guy because I don't want the media to give him a hard time before he's got his stuff in order. All right. But so Patrick did this, ran down, and he's basically confirming whether the methodology was correct. All right. Other investigative sources, Google Ancestry, Michigan Resident Database. So to verify that the individuals that were listed in the EverVis doc that we gave to him were in fact persons who cast a ballot, they entered the name at random. Again, it's very important to stress that this was random, double random. So it was double random. The only way,
people. Double random. What are
the odds? Get it? What are the odds?
Hey.
What are the odds? So, just to say this, I guess it's fair to say the first part was targeted random because we weren't pulling from the entire voter file. We were pulling from the universe of deceased, those who were flagged as dead, deceased, and those are change of address flags. So I think it's at least fair to say the first is targeted random, but that's still nonsense because we randomly pulled from that. I didn't say, let me put it this way. I didn't say, just give me the dead voters in Wayne County. I didn't target Wayne or any blue area any more than I targeted red areas. It was a statewide pull. All right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying. Can you tell them to give me a second? Yeah, I'm doing that.
Look at you hiding behind the screen.
Damn right.
Fresh.
All right, so 110 of the 117 individuals in the double random, or 94.1% of the subsample, had a date of death reported on the list and were identified as having applied for, sending, and submitting a ballot. So not a bad, sometimes the voter files are just dirty, guys, and they're inaccurate. This is why I wanted somebody else to look at it. This is exactly why. You can't be totally certain there. They are, and if you watch this show, they are far from perfect. They're imperfect. So it's always good to have another pair of eyes. Only 3 individuals, or 2.56% of the subsample, were identified as having applied for and sending a ballot, but no ballot receive date was reflected on the Michigan voter information website. So while the media tells you what Trump said a little bit ago that I showed you was bull, that the Michigan Secretary of State violated laws and sent these requests to everyone, is absolutely true. So which is it? Did a dead person request to have their ballot sent to their fake address or old address or no longer existing address or prior address? Or did the Michigan Secretary of State just send them out? Now, let's show people real quick before we go on to the next one that we did in fact ask people to tell us whether or not these ballot requests were going out. And if you had this happen to you, please send a picture. And we keep one from Michigan handy. This is Macomb County, and you've probably seen it before. All right. This guy got 6 of them. It was like everyone who lived in his house over the last several decades. He could have filled these in if he wanted to and asked for them because they weren't meaningfully checking or verifying that the mail-in ballots were absolutely filled in by somebody else. If he wanted to, if he thought Trump was Hitler, okay, then he may think he was the virtuous one getting these ballot requests, responding to them, having the ballots sent back to him, and in fact handing them in. Because he's the virtuous one. You got to stop Hitler. What's worse? Committing a little bit of voter fraud on an individual level, or standing by while a monster wreaks havoc over a certain population? Give me a break. But this is seriously the mentality you have to keep in mind when you look at this and wonder why on earth people would do this. Because this is what Robert and I mean by a great deal of the fraud was outsourced. Outsourced. Make it very difficult to find. Make it very difficult to pin down and blame, from one person for a conspiracy. Anyway, next, Patrick used Find a Grave to try to further confirm that they were dead. All right, which will tell you, give you obituary resources. All right, well, because we used some obituaries to confirm, but really we were trying to use death indexes. All right, so it was another resource to say whether or not they could actually be found. All right, and then the Michigan resident database. All right. So let's get into what had been found here. So the following pages of this report are of those individuals the investigator, Patrick, positively identified as being deceased via public notice or Find a Grave record. Positive date of birth and date of death match to the Everviz doc that we provided, as well as a full or partial match of the records to the Michigan resident database information. The number next to each voter name corresponds to where they are located in document B, all right, which is the document he sent. I got to put that up too. But Charles E. Bear, born April 20th, 1947, definitely died December 8th, 2010, yet returned to ballot on October 14th, 2020 in Berrien County Precinct 1. You want to read his obituary, knock yourself out. I'm going to put this, we're going to put some of this stuff up soon. Record 2, partial match, which, by the way, if you go back and look at the definitions, does not mean it's like an invalid record that you have to throw out. Dorothy Baker, born 1927. All right. 1927. January 25th, 1927. Date of death, August 20th, 2011. Returned to ballot on October 12th, 2020. In Kent County, Ward 2, Precinct 27. Listen, Kent County is bad. And it's why it's notable to me, because it is the second most frequent county that we found these ballots. Okay. These illegal ballots. All right. Why is it important? Because Joe Biden, that's one of the very few counties that Joe Biden actually did flip back, but he only did it barely. And if you have this level of frequency where you have positive matches, then you're talking about a potential for a very significant number, one that in fact could be the margin. All right. I mean, you would not know until you did all of the work, but it certainly, the numbers, the percentages certainly suggest that it warrants somebody do it. All right. And you could read all about Dorothy's death there if you'd like. All right. Helen Baker, 1920, May 18th. Date of death, December 10th, 2002. Returned to ballot on October 21st in Jackson County, Precinct 2. You can read all about it. By the way, notice in red, did I pass one in case I passed one? Notice in red that these people, in fact, died in Illinois. This one, Dorothy, died in Illinois. Helen died in North Carolina. May, who I'm about to read about, died in Delaware. Okay? Many of these were change of address flags, which is why the voter file probably spit them out too when you put the search query in for give me dead Michigan, but also change of address. Some of these people are like double, not eligible, double ineligibles. That's what we'll call it. Double ineligibles. They were dead, but they were change of address flags before they were deceased flags. So this is why it can take some time to really uncover this stuff, because you may not find it in that state. You may not find a certificate of death in that state or a record of the death in that state. And you're wondering, what on earth is going on? The index says this person is dead, but I can't find it in Michigan. So you have to find it and search by that index. And you will find that that person, in fact, left Michigan 10 years before, 5 years before, 2 years, whatever it may be, and then died in North Carolina. May Baker, born May 16, 1920, died in Delaware on July 22nd, 2005, yet returned to ballot on October 26, 2020 in Wayne County, Precinct 39. All right, keep going down the list. Raymond Baker, born January 8, 1937, died September 29, 2001. Some of these old records, too, don't have telephone numbers attached to them in the voter file. So it's very difficult to call them up or find them. Returned, and when you sometimes reach your family, they're so afraid because they don't want to be castigated by the media.
Lemon Minty wants to know, is it the same deceased list in these states?
No, each state has their own.
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine we didn't look into North Carolina. I mean, what I wondered, Lemon Minty, is whether or not we would find Helen Baker in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we just didn't look at North Carolina, really.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, honestly, that's what our new project is going to be. It's going to be completely dedicated to this. All right. And not just 1 year.
But I can't reiterate that this is a double-blind sample.
I know. And that's why don't get thrown by the partial matches, because it doesn't mean that it's not a legitimately illegal vote. It simply means we're using very strict standards to confirm the work we're doing. All right, so there's Raymond Baker, birthday 1937, January 8th, died December 29, 2001 in the state of Kentucky. In the state of Kentucky, yet returned to ballot on October 17th, 2020 in Wayne County, Precinct 141. Barbara Barnes, born February 14th, 1944, died again in the state of Kentucky on June 21st, 2000. Returned to ballot on 10/29/2020 in Marquette County, Precinct 1, the only blue county in northern Michigan. All right, we could just keep going down the list, but I think you guys get the point. All right, so the idea that the first excuse was that these votes didn't count. We now know from the rejection rate in the state of Michigan, they rejected totally, statewide, everybody for everything. They only rejected 14,000 ballots, or 0.14% or something. The likelihood that I just magically happen to randomly pull the one and only list of everybody they objected out of a list of, I think it's like 1.6 million or something.
It was insane.
Is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And if you buy it, you need to go back to school, because you don't have to be a statistician to know that's ludicrous, guys. Ludicrous. All right. It's 1:35. I got to take a real quick break. All right. But when we come back, I need a drink of water. And
Yeah.
And then we'll come back. I'll wrap up this. And then I just want to talk a little bit about, what to do over the holiday. I want to actually
first I want to talk about Georgia really quickly because I'm not totally done and I hate it when this happens. But if you follow me on Twitter, you'll get it at peoples_pundit. All right. There's some also, because I was traveling, I didn't get to do as quickly as I wanted to. I'm going back to ask all of the people that we spoke to. Anywhere between 5 and 9% of each of those samples were undecided. I want to go back and ask those people if they decided. And I want to yes, I'm specifically targeting them. All the laws of randomization have been violated in polling and modern polling anyway. So we don't rely on that. Larger samples representative of each group. All right. It's a sampling error. There is no real margin of error anymore because really not truly random, even though they tell you, well, it's a live caller, it was random. It's not true, and you know that if you watch the show. All right. So yeah, when we get back, we'll do that. Don't forget, by the way, to follow on Twitter because you will get them on Twitter. All right. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. Like the video. Very much appreciated. Because unfortunately, with a growing following comes a growing number of trolls. So I'd very much like you to outweigh with likes their trolling. It would be great. And then, of course, if you are on Periscope, we love you for all the stars that you've, we got stars, the hearts, super hearts, all of that. They're gonna take down Periscope soon, and it's gonna be just a part of Twitter. So if you still are a Periscope watcher, you're helping me greatly because it's gonna be harder to get rid of a super broadcaster because they're gonna. I don't know if you guys know this, but Periscope's getting deprecated, and it'll become part of Twitter. All right. So we love you for that as well. Facebook users, if you're still on Facebook, even after Mark Zuckerberg bribed election officials to violate state laws in the hopes to make this mess that he made, if you're still on Facebook, we'd very much appreciate you to like the page, People's Pundit Daily. All right. And we'll be back in a quick 30 seconds. Yeah, we do have to look into going to D-Live. That's a great point. Right. And we're back. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. Follow me on Twitter at People's_Pundit. All right. Let's look at a few more. And on Parler at People's Pundit. All right. Let's look at a few more here because there are some that are very interesting. For instance, Mildred Bates. Okay. Absolutely on the voter file. Matched first name, middle name, last name, but a birth year, which we were able to match, but get a date of birth, June 18th, 1915. Okay. Died August 13th, 2001. Excuse me. Died in the state of South Carolina. Was born in the state of Oklahoma. And her obituaries did not even indicate that she ever lived in the state of Michigan. But she did. And ended up on the voter file. Returned to ballot October 8th, 2020 in Leelanau County, Precinct 1. On October 8th. So when I tell you they were at this for months, they were at this for months. All right. So some of this, born and died in California, also does not ever indicate that she was a resident of the state of Michigan. She was matched first name, middle name, last name to date of birth. December 10th, 1940. Died in the state of California, November 11th, 2001. Returned to ballot on September 30th in Lapierre County, Precinct 2. All right. So at some point was there, registered, and that registration had been on there all the time. Not purged. No voter suppression. Purging the voter rolls was not an effort to suppress voters. It really, when you investigate this stuff, Laura, it really shows you how much the Democratic argument about, cleaning up voter rolls as voter suppression is such a load of crap. Because even Georgia, which was a centerpiece, said, oh, can't purge the rolls. The rolls are dirty as hell. 134,000 change of address flags in Fulton County. Damn numbers don't match. Remember that?
Yes.
Oh my God. That's a little bit of a joke. I actually showed that on the show a little bit. I don't know, maybe some people didn't see it, but it's a little joke between me and Laura. When I tell you the caliber of these election officials, like, this is not grade A beef people we're dealing with here. All right.
They're special.
Not only
That's
can't they
my
spell,
word.
but apparently they can't use a spell check. I mean, it's so bad.
I mean, it's even built in. I mean, can't you just highlight the dang word?
Listen, Laura, they looked for it, but the numbers don't. The numbers
Yeah.
don't match.
And these are the people running your country, folks.
Oh my God, these are the people who are determining who won how many votes, and oh my Lord, they essentially control who won the country, not you. All right, but we see this a lot, and it really does show how that this really was not legit. This was not these excuses that are being used, and these narratives about voter suppression are just not legitimate. They are not true, which is why the data backs up they are not true. Voter turnout among African Americans has consistently risen since the 1990s, even in 2012, to exceed white voter turnout as a percentage of their eligible registered voter population. So that it should be no surprise when someone digs through these voter files that you find dirt after dirt after dirt, because the argument was never true. Gwendolyn Bellamy, return to ballot 10/10/2020, Wayne County, precinct 187, died October 18th, 1997 in the state of California. Died in Rhode Island, October 5th, 2005. Returned to ballot 10/16/2020, Wayne County, precinct 446. Died in Alabama, 120 years old. The world's oldest person alive as of October 2020 is 117 years old. Died, are you ready? October 1st, 1980, in the state of Alabama. Returned an absentee ballot the day before the election on 11/2 in Wayne County, precinct 190. So people wonder why there's suspicion surrounding late arriving ballots. If this ballot, let's speculate, was backdated, let's say, like we said before, that I believe, and I strongly suspect from what I see when I look at all these states, that Trump, they had a number. Trump exceeded that number. And then they stopped the count to make sure stuff was backdated, stuff was in time. But some things are just bound to get a little sloppy when you're doing things like that. If this was a backdated ballot and Trump won more votes than you imagined, you may be forced. You may be forced or sloppy enough, and this would be the perfect record for it. James Bradley Jr. This was first name, middle name, last name, suffix. That name match. Date of birth, January 7th, 1900. Died 10/1/1980. Born in Indiana, died in Alabama. Miss Brooks. Again, not even in the Michigan resident database, because some of them get, I guess, pulled out. Or that's a full match. I'm sorry, Patrick, my bad. That is a full match. So, in fact, yet the obituary, her brief life in Michigan was so insignificant. It wasn't even mentioned in her obituary. Mm-hmm. But lived there at some point, got on the registration rolls. Date of birth, November 29th, 1931. Date of death, January 28th, 2010. Returned to ballot on October 12th in Wayne County, Precinct 1. All right. I mean, we really keep going because he really has all these examples in here. Some really fabulous one. I mean, the point is, the voter file is like sometimes incomplete, sometimes dirty. It's far from perfect. So You get what you think you have, a pool that you have, even if 95% of that nearly 12,000 was confirmed, or 90%, let's say, we're talking about a significant number of votes. A very significant number of votes. And also what we're talking about is some form of a concerted effort. Whether it was her plan to send out all these requests so that you could basically outsource it and let the fear of Nazi do the work for you, or you had people doing it. Some of these, like Charlie Brown, no joke. Charlie Brown. Okay? Charles Douglas Brown, born January 7th, 1951. Died March 7th in Virginia, 2001. Returned to ballot on 11/2, Wayne County, Precinct 2. Some of those strike me as a little bit more, instead of voter fraud, more election fraud. Because it's so close to the election. It's a late arriving ballot.
Yep.
You know, that it tells me that's more than just the outsource. Or at least indicative. It could be. It's possible. It's potential. It's probably even more likely than not.
And it wasn't like this was just winged last minute fraud.
Yeah, no, it's
Because
everywhere.
These ballots were submitted, some of them in September,
That's right.
October.
That's
So
exactly
this
right.
was
You
well
could
in
you can see the
advance.
difference between the
Yeah.
late arriving and then the ones in advance. You can actually see that difference.
And that goes to show you their big oops when they realized
That's
that
right.
Trump had a larger margin than ever.
That's right. That's right. And even in Macomb, where he was romping it, he was at like almost 60% until those several thousand late arrivers, like William Joseph Burke, full match, born 1932, date of death May 24th, 2008, who returned his ballot somehow in the 2nd precinct in Macomb County. I mean, so by the way, he died in Illinois. I mean, this is what. So this idea that it doesn't have an impact. Like I said, we had some early voter ready, Laura, in Macomb. So why would everything, demographics and geography, no different? The only difference is time, when the ballots were submitted and when they were dumped, right? That's it. That's the only difference. It doesn't make any sense that the margin would be so heavy in initial dumps and then a total of, or let's say it was 70-30 Biden in those initial dumps. Demographics and geography are similar. The only difference is the time, because at like 2 a.m., there's another dump in the very same area in Macomb County. Precinct 1, Precinct 2, demographically similar. But for some reason, those late arrivals went 90-10, 95-5. You see what I'm saying? There's just that is highly suspect. It's highly suspect. They should have been consistent, as they typically are. I mean, can there be exceptions? Of course, but that's the problem. There are exceptions in only key areas, which makes it even more suspect. All right. So moving on, because we're running out of time. And I do have to end a little bit early. Not early, but just a couple of minutes early. I saw Quix's comment, and I have to say, this reeks of union to me. This reeks of a union operation. All right, and I don't want to even bring them up in it, but it was suggested to me, and because I really don't know why. I can't understand why others would take the risk of doing this. It reeks like a union marching order. Like, so, and there's no way to really, I don't think there's any way to really prove that. I don't. But maybe that's why we're looking at the areas we're looking at. Certain areas tended to be more frequent than others, which are like union heavy, where unions are present. I just feel like it's like a gangs in New York kind of thing. I guess. And if you want some names, I mean, I'll just tell you the clerks who come up the most frequent here. That's the other document. But the clerks who come up the most frequent are, and I don't want to get any names wrong, but I had done it. Kent County and Wayne County. What I understand, a pretty never Trumper dude in Kent, and Wayne County, Shirley, has aspirations to run for or has had them for a while. So
I love when people say, oh, well, the Georgia's secretary is Republican.
And so is Gabriel Sterling, his right-hand man.
I know.
And look at Robert. This is an idiot who has been saying, another idiot. We're just going to use that word a lot because it's not a name calling. I'm talking about the definition of an idiot. All right. Gabriel Sterling and the Secretary of State is bosom buddy, ensuring and assuring everyone how the Georgia election had so much integrity, was incredibly secure. They absolutely matched the signatures. Somebody used Gabriel Sterling's own address to vote. Think about that. Somebody used Gabriel Sterling's own address to vote.
That's epic.
It really is. It's epic. It's that's the word. It really is poetic justice. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, poetic justice.
Is that what I'm looking for? All right, so you know what? Before I spin on, though, here, at the conclusion of this investigation, the following determinations have been made outside of the reasonable speculation. There were, well, he goes through the rates, all right? 24% is above the unforced error rate threshold, which puts these findings within the likely category for determining if an error is accidental or a deliberate action. These identified individuals, according to the Michigan Voter Information System, received ballots which were returned to their respective townships and or city clerks. Of course, the investigator, Mr. Badger, cannot determine, nor can I, who in fact requested, received, and returned these ballots, and cannot conclusively identify the political candidate or candidates who benefited from those ballot returns. That is, of course, part of my job. Looking at these areas and these dumps, I can tell you definitively that Joe Biden was the overwhelming benefactor of these ballot jumps. I mean, that's part of my job. These precincts voted this way. Mail-in ballot went this way. We know how it went. But you can't be too sure who in fact did it. There are plenty of people who, not only I, but Matt and others have know that they were denied even requesting certain ballots, or, you know, the parents didn't request it. The people who died, they've been dead, and they did not do it. Nobody in their household would have done it, right? So, no, I did not request the ballot for my dead father. And no, I did not return the ballot for my dead father. No way, no, and not just because they don't want to get in trouble. They didn't do it. They didn't do it. So it's really hard in some of these instances to determine who did it. In a standard investigation, it would attempt to interview individuals, which is really, that is the next step. But first, it's like the law enforcement. You don't want to interview people until you have enough of the facts, right? So that's why with we want the application. We want the absentee ballot applications. There's information on it, and I'd show it to you if we had time, but somebody had to sign that. And then a clerk had to sign off on it. So, or somebody, theoretically anyway. All right, but there's basically, under penalty of perjury, I am who I am. If the ballot had to go to a different address, okay? So, for instance, tons of people that no longer, like I told you, change of address flags, no longer even lived at those addresses. Then there was another separate box where they had to say, this is my address on record, but I don't want it sent there. Can you send it here? And then they sign it. That is what we want, that information before we go parading around. Because what if somebody does lie to us? What if it's not a Democratic operative and somebody's son who hates Donald Trump, or daughter who hates Donald Trump, or themselves who hate Donald Trump did it? They did it because the fraud was outsourced. Like that's what it looks like. We told you. Don't we want to know whether or not we have their signature, or if we're dealing with the signatures of the same person over and over again on many of these ballots? Don't we want to know that before we go and ask, and just simply take somebody's word for it? No, I didn't do it. And then you're going to jump to you're going to make the assumption and jump to the conclusion that some Democratic hack who works for the government filled it in,
Mm-hmm.
or some operative on the ground, Democratic operatives did it. Well, what if they didn't? And you're unfairly blaming them for at least some of these ballots. What if it really was Joe Miller who received a ballot for Joe Smith, who used to live at his house 20 years ago? And Joe Miller is a raging liberal who watches MSNBC all day long, or CNN all day long. I mean, his crush is Rachel Maddow,
Oh God.
and he did it.
Sorry.
You don't want to blame people that just don't deserve blame, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So like the FBI or the police, before you interview people, you want it. And according to Michigan state law, they must retain those documents for 6 years after the election. And we want those documents. But there hasn't been a very good response. So I'm going to need Robert to legally compel them to give them to me, if possible. Anyway, in a standard, that's what they would do, noted, right? This is important. It should be noted that when this investigator returned to the Michigan Voter Information Center, so when Patrick went back, because sometimes you will go back to try to confirm something. Did I get this date right? Did I do, you just make sure. There are multiple times at which you'll go back and try to look at that, bring that record up again, and try to look at it. When he went to the page on November 22nd, to enter the required individual voter information to review ballot information for the 108th entry of the subsample. That information was no longer available. This happened to us too. I was kind of quiet about it, and I wanted to see if he saw the same thing. They were deleting.
Mm-hmm.
They were removing records.
And that's
To ensure this was not an isolated, limited result. Limited to the particular individual. This investigator entered several persons from the subsample who had previously been entered into the site. And we have them too. Those individuals also no longer had ballot information available. Let me explain to you what I'm saying here. Election officials are deleting records that were once available. Once it became public.
Which is illegal to do.
Once people from PolitiFact and others, once I, gave a subsample to the Detroit Free Press.
To see if they do the honorable thing.
Which they did not, apparently.
Shocker.
These records, they're not an accident. But unfortunately, I do fear that one other outlet who I shared this with gave them a larger one. Mm-hmm. But in any event, we baited them at first with a few here and there. Little nugget, little crumb. However, this investigator had previously collected screenshots from this website for each individual result in the subsample. So the ballot information for those persons was not lost. In other words, that's a nice way of investigators saying, I busted you, bro. Okay?
You're screwed.
You could delete all you want, but I took pictures, and you're just making it worse on yourself. The reasons for why the ballot information is no longer available is not known. As of the conclusion of this report, that information remains unavailable. It's operated by Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. The Michigan Voter Information Center is operated by the Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. The conclusion of this investigator is that the evidence reviewed indicates that ineligible votes were recorded as received in the state of Michigan. The sudden removal of ballot information from the Michigan Voter Information Center webpage is suggestive in previous investigative studies and cases, an effort to destroy its evidentiary nature. Additional investigative measures are required. Now, that essentially means maybe you should kick this to the FBI. But these people are totally corrupt.
True story.
They're totally corrupt. So I need Robert Barnes because they can delete them on the website, guys. But according to state law, they need to retain those records. If we sue for the requests, then we'll be able to tell. And at least I'll be able, and this is what I want, I'll be able to tell a judge, I specifically want these applications. I know they were made. Mm-hmm. Here are the screenshots, Judge. They were made. Whether you can tell right now, the paper trail should still exist, Judge. I want the signatures, please. Can you please order Miss Jocelyn Benson to give me the damn paper?
And if not, you in trouble.
Well, the judge may just sandbag us. That may just happen. This is also another which we did take this advice. Interviews of the city clerks whose districts and/or wards had the highest returns and match rate for the questionable ballots should be performed. These clerks need to be asked to make statements on the safeguards in place to prevent ineligible votes from being cast and their explanations when faced with the partial and full match evidence found in this investigation. And we can tell you it is, in fact, Wayne and Kent, just like his blind, double blind found the same thing, about 4 times as many results in Wayne than this overall sample, and about 2 times as many in Kent. So they were the highest repeat offenders. All right. And an interview with the Michigan Secretary of State is highly recommended. A reason should be given for the removal of the ballot records from the Michigan Voter Information Center, or to find out if those records have been retained and are being stored elsewhere. So, Patrick, I'm taking your advice. All right, I am. I'm on it, It should be noted that Michigan has specific record retention laws, exactly, that pertain to elections and vote records. So maybe they want to delete them from the website, but again, guys, that application is there. And crap, you know what? I'll have to do a small little thing here just to tell you guys, but I do want to say this before we go because, wow, it's already 2:01. All right. I want you all to enjoy your holiday. If you're obviously Christmas and you celebrate Christmas, like I said before, not to be a broken record, all of this has to be for something. All of this has to be for something. All right. So do your best to enjoy these next couple of days, and we'll get, and then get back in it right after. Then get, dust yourself off and get back in it right after. I was going to do this one today as the last kind of pre-Georgia poll, definitely pre-Christmas Georgia poll, but because it is what it is, we're going to do some inside the numbers before. I'm not really taking a vacation. That's not going to happen, so we'll be around. So I'll be there. But as much as I love you guys watching the show, and, we're a community here, family in our own right, I really want you to enjoy the holidays. So do your best to do so. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas if you celebrate Christmas.
Very, very
if you are Jewish and celebrated Hanukkah, I hope you had a wonderful holiday. And we just want to thank you all for the blessings this year. I mean, the loyal readership, the contribution, the super chats, the viewership, the subscriptions.
The word of mouth.
The word of mouth.
The way you guys support us and fight for us.
Yep.
I mean, we fight just as hard for you.
That's right.
And it's very humbling. Like, I'm getting
very
goosebumps
humbling
right now just talking about it.
Incredibly humbling.
We do love you, and at any time,
Appreciate.
Of course, appreciate it. But this is the year to reflect. 2020 really was supposed to be a great year when we came into it, and then they hit us.
COVID blew us off the map. Yeah. I was going to do a New Year thing, but she's absolutely right. It was supposed to be a great year. We're coming in this rocking economic news. The media was trying to push us into a recession. It didn't happen. Housing was circling around. Builder confidence hits an all-time high. Consumers are like, yeah, let's do this. It was going to be a great year. So I know it was really tough on everybody, and yet they still managed to bless the hell out of us. And
we are most appreciative.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm losing my voice from all the talking that I did at Charlie Kirk's summit. So
can you say talk and call one more? Talk and call one more time.
Why do I? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice because I talked so much, and all the phone calls that I received from Richie this past 2 days has made my voice a little hard. I guess hoarse. Made
their day. Yeah. It also didn't hurt that she was like, yeah, Pence.
Oh,
Laura loves Mike Pence. Don't let her lie.
My silver fox.
The silver fox.
Charlie, you brought my
Laura loves Mike Pence.
I love you, and great speech, man. That's
so funny.
But don't worry, I love your wife too, so I'm not like that, man.
That's so funny. That really is so. And so we're gonna kick it. We got the Feast of the Seven Fishes tomorrow. We're Italian. God, I gotta tell you, I slave over that dinner. Dinner.
Right.
I was waiting to see how slashy.
People and tell them lies, Richie.
I
Now,
do Christmas Day.
That is the first lie from People's Pundit
Ever.
ever.
It was a joke. It wasn't a lie. It was a joke.
Mhm.
I don't do that dinner. Laura does the dinner. I do Christmas
That's it.
Day.
I'm taking one present away just for that.
No, I do Christmas Day. But she does the vast majority of the work on the Feast of the Seven Fishes, except for she doesn't like to handle bacalao. You know, so you got to soak the bacalao yourself and soak and drain, soak and drain, soak and drain. But she does all the frying and the scallop, and you know, she just does everything. You know, so I wanted to see her face and her reaction to when I said that. It took you a minute, love. It did. It took you a minute.
I'm like sitting there trying to reply to all the love. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, did he just say that?
Because she
out
works her
loud?
butt off. She really does. And every year she tops herself, and it's delicious. I mean, she's not only a worker. I mean, she's a. My kids are spoiled. My kids are spoiled when it comes to food. Like they'll go to friends' houses and be like, "Oh yeah, it's delicious," you know, because they don't want to be mean. But Laura is like an amazing cook. She really is amazing cook. You know, which I'm not. I'm great at it myself. I just don't do it as much as her, and she has. I don't know. You know, she's just got it. She blends different cultures. I tend to stick with a few that I know. You know, and then I do Christmas Day dinner, and that's the deal.
He does the main course, like the meat. I do everything else.
The main course takes all my energy.
Oh,
what are you talking about? You know, that's
don't get me started. I'm gonna hurt you before they go.
I'll do the sides this year too. I swear, I will.
I'm going to be alive to see that.
I kid you not. Yeah,
you're
going to
hear
be alive.
That? Do you hear that, people? You better hold them accountable.
What the hell have I just done?
I'll
do it.
Thousands of witnesses.
I'll do it. I got it. She does. She's got it. Thousands of witnesses. All right, but I hope you all again, you know, do take advice, enjoy it, love it. We'll see you after Christmas. Unless I decide to pop on after Christmas, and we hope you have a very merry one. All the best, folks. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers. We'll see you in a couple days.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife, to give into the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you own me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come